Hello, and welcome to the Moms Love Coaching Podcast, where we talk about self-care from the inside out for moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, along with Angie Turgeon-Ledoux. We are certified life coaches and moms, and in this podcast, we'll go beyond the take a spa day advice and talk about real and sustainable ways that you can feel better, be happier, and stay out of overwhelm and burnout. You spend your life taking care of everyone else. In this podcast, each week, it's all about you taking care of you with no guilt and no apologies. We're so happy that you've decided to spend this time with us, so go ahead and grab your favorite cup of coffee, find a comfortable place, and get ready to spend the next 30 minutes focusing on the most important person in your life, you. All right, welcome everybody. We're back with Moms Love Coaching Podcast, where we teach self-care from the inside out. Angie is here. Hi, Angie.
Hi.
And Angie's cat is here. You can't see Angie's cat, but she is here as well. She wants to be part of the action.
You will not hear her purring, but I'm hearing her purring. She's a quiet purr.
So we are recording this right after Thanksgiving. And so we're now moving into, if you celebrate Christmas, the Christmas season, or if you celebrate something else. But usually in the wintertime, this is when all of the holidays happen. And so holidays usually means traditions and family and, all the things. And so I started thinking about traditions in the sense of people not wanting to give up what they do every single year. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes that works. And sometimes things need to change. And there's lots of feelings about that. Lots of feelings about changing traditions. Things change, families grow. Sometimes families shrink, and what you've done all along doesn't quite make sense anymore. And what do you do with that? And so it started me thinking about other things that change and evolve as you go through life and how you deal with that. And so what I have come up with is it's just about being adaptable to your situation. Sometimes when people have to change what they're doing and they've never had to do that before, they see it as a negative. They see it as a failure because they've always done it a certain way and now they have to do it a different way. And they take that as a bad thing or a negative thing and they beat themselves up about it. So this big concept of adaptability, when it comes right down to it, it's about taking care of yourself in the process of transition from what you have always done to what you now are going to do for whatever reason, because things change. And so you need to change what you're doing, because the truth is, if we don't adapt, then it basically, if you think about the pandemic, all the different businesses that had to adapt in the pandemic, the restaurant business, so many business, the restaurant business comes to mind, because I don't know if they were hit the hardest, but they were on the news, at least where I live, they were on the news a lot because they weren't takeout and a lot of them had to go to takeout. A lot of them didn't make it because they didn't want to change what they were doing. So their business died. So if you don't adapt, you die. Same thing in the animal world, right? If you think about the process of evolution, animals that don't adapt to what is happening around them will go extinct. And so adaptability in and of itself is self-care, and how you think about the way that you adapt makes all the difference. Because if you think that changing the way that you're doing something because of what's happening around you is a bad thing, then you're going to beat yourself up about it. But if you realize that it's part of the evolution of your life, then you're going to be able to go through that much more easily and adapt to your situation and then come out on the other side even stronger and better than before. What do you think about that, Angie? So I don't go on and on and on like I normally do.
Well, so as you're talking, I'm thinking about adaptability and the process of change, and how, there's a saying like the only thing that you can count on in life is, that things change or something. There is some sort of
Yeah.
saying, right, about
Right. Right.
change in taxes or something like that. I think
Yeah.
it is, but and I want to acknowledge the fact that there is when things change, there is a grief process, that we have to go through a process of acknowledging our feelings about that change.
Yes.
But I think in some ways, when you're clinging to the way it used to be and not thinking, there's an energy about it that is not serving you. Like you feel sad, you feel reflective, like you know those things don't work the same way anymore. And that was a really good thing, and I'm going to miss it. And you acknowledge those feelings, but you also allow yourself to look toward the future and say, okay, you accept that that's the way it is now. I think that's being adaptable, is seeing that that this has so I think about the stages of my kids as they've grown up, and how I was thinking about my basement. So I'm sitting in my basement, y'all. My office is in my basement. And I'm thinking about how my basement is a museum of the various stages that I've gone through. Like, I have my Barbie dolls from when I was a kid are in a container over there. And some of my favorite baby dolls I hung on to too. Those were so important to me as a kid. And my daughters did play with those things. I have their baby dolls, and at some point, my son now has his own home, and his toys, his GI Joes, went to his home a few years ago. So I think about those changes and the kids growing up and going through different stages, and how it's kind of sad. Somebody was saying, "Oh, I miss that age." I think it was in reference to my grandsons too, and he does some really adorable things right now, and how people saying, "Oh, I miss that age." I miss that age. We forget about all the challenges of that age, but we do tend to miss, watching their vocabulary development, watching his little personality come out, and the funny things he says, because he doesn't, get language and how it works, and he's trying to figure it out and stuff like that. But I could feel sad, that my kids aren't that age anymore. I could really, I could actually get quite depressed, sit in the basement all day and look at their toys and say, that it's like romanticizing the past is not really serving me as I look forward to a future that is different. So part of the adaptability that I think we're talking about really is managing those emotions that come with change. And just because things are changing doesn't mean that what it was before was a bad thing. Like, we don't have to, sometimes it is. Sometimes the change is long time overdue and it was not really a good thing, and you're moving towards something better.
Right.
But a lot of times it's just you're moving towards something different. And that's where I think when we're talking about being adaptable as being a form of self-care, as saying, okay, this worked for then, what's going to work for now? What do I need to do? How do I need to be thinking? How do I need to be showing up in this space, in this circumstance, in this relationship now? And it doesn't mean that because I'm willing to let go of the way it used to be, that it's a bad thing. And I think so much of a theme of our talks as we have recorded these podcasts is about being willing to see that when we pile on judgment, we are making those bad feelings worse. We should do a podcast on that. Like, when is judgment serving you, and when is it really taking away from your experience? And this is the experience of being a human, that things change. And sometimes they change for the better and sometimes they change for the worse, but things change.
Right. I think that yeah, so I agree with the emotional piece, right? There is a grieving process, and sometimes there is judgment and all of those feelings. And I think that comes from I think it comes from people really identifying with what they feel like they were before. So instead of thinking of it as just sort of a thing, like let's take a career, for example. We were talking before we started this about how people think of careers has changed so much over the last couple generations. It used to be graduated college and you were that, whatever it was, an accountant, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a whatever, right?
Yep.
And or just, going into corporate in term, you were a marketer, you were this, you were that, you went into corporate and you were that thing forever, right? The whole idea of cradle to grave employment. And if somebody didn't want to do that anymore, or they got laid off or anything like that, it was devastating because it wasn't just the thing that was being taken away from them, it was their entire identity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think that when your identity is completely tied up in what you're doing, instead of seeing it as a separate entity of that's what I do, like I have kids and so, I mother those children, or I like to run marathons, or, all the different things. I ice skate, I do this, I do that, right? You take it on as I am that thing. And so when that thing changes or goes away, it's as if your whole identity is changing and going away, rather than it's just life and the things around you, and things just naturally change. And it doesn't mean anything negative about you, even if you don't want to do it anymore. I was listening to a podcast and somebody was talking about how they just didn't want to do Thanksgiving dinner the way they did it. They always did like a Pinterest Thanksgiving and they were really into it and they liked doing it, but they don't want to do it anymore. And so they were in a really, I mean, I would say a depression about it, because they felt like they weren't the same person. I don't want to do that anymore. And so that means all these negative things about me. Instead of just saying, my interests have changed, I just don't feel like doing that anymore. Right. I mean, you mentioned your Barbies. I love the word museum, by the way. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great description of the basement, because that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The attic or the basement, right? It's a museum
Right.
of your life. That's like so
Yeah.
perfect. But like, if you think about it, you had Barbies, right? You played with Barbies as a kid, and your kids played with dolls as kids. And now you don't play with dolls and they don't play with dolls, right? And you don't think of that as a negative, right? But if you think about it, it's no different than giving up a career or changing from being the mother of, dependent kids to being the mother of adult children, right? Where they don't need
Mm-hmm.
you as much, and your relationship with them changes. It's the same thing, but you don't look back and say, I don't play with dolls anymore. What's wrong with me?
Right.
Like, you don't do that. But we do that with so many other things. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this today is because I feel like a lot of that is you're right. There is a process to kind of like moving from one thing to another. Sometimes you do have to kind of go through that journey and grieve it and come out the other side, but still always moving forward. But I think that people just beat themselves up about it, thinking that something's wrong with them, that they don't want to do this thing anymore, or they can't do that thing anymore, right? If they have some sort of physical limitation, and beating yourself up about life changing it's so unnecessary if you think about it, because life is always changing. It never stays the same, ever, and the idea that it ever would is, I think it's something that we were kind of all conditioned with as we were growing up, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be this. I want to be that. And then if you either start off being one of those things and then change, then you consider yourself a failure because you couldn't do it. But if you think about all the different things in your life that have changed to bring you where you are now, it's all an evolution and a progression of your life that there's nothing to feel bad about if you change something.
I like the idea of thinking about life as a progression. That to me is it's always about growing and learning. And people get sick, pets die, I mean, things life changes. And I think when you're pushing against it, when you're resisting it, when you're in that
Yes.
energy of this is awful because it's changing. I mean, the change itself could be awful. Losing someone you're close to is not easy. And that could be awful, terrible, hard thing that you have to work through. But adapting and allowing, and it's like making peace with the life. This sounds so cliche. Sorry, everybody. Like making peace with life's ups and downs. Like this is what we do. Life, it speeds up, it slows down. It can be, life can seem like it is so hard sometimes, and it really can be so hard. And then but in those moments when you are alone with yourself, what are you saying to yourself? What are the words that you're hearing in your brain? What are the sentences you're hearing in your brain that may be serving you or not serving you? Like we have this
Right.
saying that suffering is off. Okay, I don't want people to think like there isn't suffering in the world. It's not that sort of thing. It's like the difference between something happening and you feeling those feelings and then hanging on to those feelings because you're making it mean that it was a terrible, horrible thing. You're like, it's that piling on of judgment that makes processing those feelings even more challenging. And so then, in essence, you're suffering through it. You're not seeing that there is a way forward.
Yeah, it's almost like the judgment stops you from feeling those feelings. It stops you from feeling the feelings that you need to feel because you're just beating yourself up with the judgment, telling yourself that it's wrong or you're terrible or whatever you're telling yourself, right? That's not the kind of like you shouldn't have done that, right? That's not the kind of feelings that we're talking about. Like if you're feeling sad about it, then feel sad about it. But layering on you did something or didn't do something that created the situation that you're feeling sad about is not necessary, right? Feel the sadness, feel the disappointment, right? Feel the whatever it is, the rejection, but telling yourself that it's your fault or you did something wrong or there was something you could do to prevent it or any of those things, that's not helping. It's not helping you process through those emotions. All it's doing is keeping you stuck there because you never give yourself a chance to feel them and move on from them.
Right.
You're just like keeping yourself there. One thing I was thinking about too, as you were talking, so there's all sorts of different transitions that would require us to be adaptable. And one situation came to my mind. So this happened to me when I was little. It also happened to my daughter. She's not little anymore. She's almost 15. But when she was like, in grade school, and she would try different things. And I did the same thing. I always wanted to try stuff, right? I wanted to try track. And that was when I was a little older, but I wanted to try track. I wanted to try judo. I wanted to try baton. I wanted to try dance. I was in jazz for a little while when I was little. Like all these different things that I wanted to try, but I never did them for more than a season or a year. Or the flute, that was another thing. I tried the flute. I never did them for long. It was either like a semester or the school year or a season, right? And then I would stop doing it and I would move on to something else. And I always internalized that as I was a quitter. And my daughter did the same thing. She wanted to try all these different things and she wanted to kind of like move on and do other things and try other things. She internalized that as being a quitter. We had lots of conversations about that. But even for like the longest time as an adult, right? It was only like in the last, I think it was when she started going through it. And then I was like,
Oh,
she's not a quitter. Like
right.
she just wants to try new things. And then it was like one of those moments where you like, you know, go back in your mind and you're like you go all the way back in your mind. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, that's exactly what I used to think too, that I was a quitter. And I never questioned it, that I was a quitter. And I always, like, I didn't really feel good about it. Like, it was just sort of, in my mind, it was just sort of matter of fact. Like, I quit things. I just quit things. I don't, you know, it never occurred to me to frame it in a way that I'm not a quitter. I like trying new things and I learn fast what I like and what I don't like. Like I learned that very quickly. And when she started going through it, it was just very clear to me that it's not about quitting. It's about doing a bunch of different things to figure out what you do like. All of the things that you do in your life help you realize what you like and what you don't like. And none of it is bad, whether you do it for a day or a week or a year. It's not bad when you give it up. It's just time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just time. Like you've done what you wanted to do, you've got what you needed out of it, and you just move on to the next thing. And feeling bad about that and internalizing ourselves as quitters is it's that judgment thing. It's just layering on more and more judgment. So it stops you from maybe being curious. It stops you from, or at least hinders you from problem solving, you know, from the critical thinking, from all those things, because you just stop yourself and say, you know, I'm bad. I'm a quitter. You know, I can't do this, right? It's a stopping point instead of thinking of it as, no, you're just adapting to what you like and what you don't like, because you're not going to like the same things forever and ever and ever. You're just not going to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how we are as humans.
I was thinking as you were talking about taste buds,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, that's a good one.
I've been hearing a lot lately about sourdough bread, and I
Yeah,
used to
what is
really,
that, by the way?
um, and I used to, the bread basket. It like recently for my birthday dinner, beginning of November is my birthday, and we went out to dinner, and the bread basket came, and typically. No, more recently, I'd say in more recent years, the bread basket doesn't really appeal to me. And I'd be like, please don't bring it because I'm just going to eat it because it's there, not because I necessarily love it. It was worth every bite, by the way. Those were excellent bread. Like I really like a really nice, high quality bread, but it got me thinking about, excuse me, kids going through those stages where, all they want to eat is the white foods.
Yeah.
The pasta,
Yeah,
bread,
that's
the
true.
chips.
Potatoes, French
Yeah.
fries.
Yeah. And that, if we all never continue, like when my kids were going through those stages, if I just said, okay, this is all you're going to eat. And I never said, well, try this again. You didn't like peas last year when you try them again this year. And maybe you might find that there's something that you used to not like that you now like. And I think there is something about your taste buds changing over time as you get older, as you age, and your palate changes and your preferences change. We don't make that mean anything,
Right.
like I have friends, I have family members who they're very particular about what they will eat. There's certain flavors that they just
Yep.
don't like. We don't make that mean anything. We
Right.
pick on them about it in a fun way because it's amusing, but it's not about making them a bad person because they don't like pepper.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
okay, you don't like pepper, we'll work around it. I won't put the seasonings on this for you, right? That sort of thing. And that's really where, as their tastes change and as they adapt to the world around them, they learn what they like, they learn what they don't like. And we're not saying that one is good or one is bad. It's just the way it is. And there's so many, I think, so many things in life where it's just the way it is.
Right.
And we want to make it, I mean, to be human is to judge, right?
It's true. I mean, well, it's wired into us
Right. If
because
we
if you go
didn't judge,
all the
we
way
died.
back, right, we have to
Right.
judge the situation and the surroundings and the food and the plants and the animals. Yeah.
When that judgment is keeping you stuck, keeping you from trying something new, keeping you from being present, keeping you from enjoying what's right in front of you right now.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what we're talking about here and hoping that folks get from the conversation today.
I think what I want people to get out of this is that if there is something, if something has changed in your life, no matter what it is, and you are also finding yourself in a situation where you need to change what you're doing in any way, if you are feeling at all not negative in the sense like maybe it's sad or disappointing, that's not what we're talking about. But if you are judging yourself for it, if you are having the thoughts that, I am bad, or I shouldn't have done this, or I should have done more, or whatever that is, that you just question it. Is that really true? And just start to question all of that. Like, just how I frame myself as a quitter forever. Like I thought it was just part of who I was. I was a quitter. And then realizing that, wait a minute, no, I'm not. There's lots of things that I've done that I haven't quit. So how come the things that I did when I was 8 that I didn't want to do anymore? Why is that making me a quitter, right? So if you don't want to do your career anymore, even if you went to let's pretend you're a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You went through all of those, all of that schooling and all of the residency and all of that. And it was a long process. And now you're a doctor and you've been a doctor for 10 years and you don't want to do it anymore. That doesn't mean that you are bad. It just means that you're changing. Something has changed and we always change. And if you don't want to do that thing anymore, it is not a bad thing. It's just you adapting to life and you framing your life in a different way. Like it's just not something that you want to do anymore, Right. So I think it's just about framing it to yourself in a way that doesn't make you the villain is basically what it is. I think that's a good place to end. Don't make yourself the villain, people.
Yeah.
So, all right. Until next time.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self-care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week, and remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self-care.